Hey guys, welcome back to another video that's not random thoughts. I'm gonna be starting a new series called Revival, and I think that's what this whole channel is gonna be actually about from here on out. Basically what Revival is a series of people's testimonies about how God changed their lives, what He has done in their life. I think a big factor in your relationship with God is actually community, because the one thing that God said is while you're here on earth, it is not good to be alone. And I want to provide community in the comment section of this video and through these people that are sharing their testimonies and their secrets to the world, just to give other people a little hope, saying, if God did this in my life, He can do it in your life too. So today I have my very good friend Nani coming on here, and she's about to do her testimony, and I'm very excited because it's some really serious stuff. So if you've ever really struggled with abuse, depression, baldness, which is something you'll understand very soon. And stick around. I hope you like it. Thank you so much.
Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of Revival. My name is Nani, and I'm gonna share my testimony about how the Lord restored and redeemed all of the things in my life. So let's start at the beginning. I am one of 7 children. I have 4 older brothers, a younger sister, and a younger brother. And we grew up in Carson, California, in the middle of Los Angeles. From the ages of 6 to 18, I moved 11 times. And in those times, I went through a ton of trials and tribulations, starting with my parents separating when I was 6. My dad was unfaithful in their marriage. So when I was 6 years old, me and all my siblings had to move from Los Angeles with my mom to San Diego. And from there, my mom developed this addiction to crystal meth and just snowballed into all these unhealthy patterns and behaviors. And she started to become really neglectful and just not the mother that we knew. And someone that I put on this pedestal as this superhuman, amazing mother that I looked up to a lot turned into someone that I didn't recognize. And all my siblings and I in San Diego for a couple of years would have to fend for ourselves and just watch our mom deteriorate into someone that honestly is like hard to even think about now. And there were days when we would be left alone or not able to go to school, or days where we didn't have clothes, so we would have to just wear the same thing every day and get bullied and things like that. We watched my oldest 2 brothers do what they can to provide food for us a lot of the times, and they were in middle school. For those years, it was just really tough to be able to understand what it was like to really be a kid and to really be a daughter. So we went a couple of years just living like that. My mom never told the rest of my family about what she was doing and why we were the way that we were. We were being very mistreated. And after a couple of years, we were taken away from my mom and we're all split up. So by twos, we were all split up into different houses. Me and my sister moved in with my aunt. And for the years between when I was 9 to when I was 18, that's when we really started moving around. Every 2 years, we lived in a different home. And we experienced a lot of abuse, starting with my aunt. She was really physically abusive. Used to just like leave us outside a lot of the time. She just really wasn't prepared to take care of kids that weren't hers. And all of my other siblings went through the same thing. Different kinds of abuse and neglect from different people who didn't want to take care of kids that weren't theirs. So from those couple of years, it was really tough for me to really understand what it meant and what it felt like to accept that I was loved, because the people in my life that said that they loved me did these horrible things to me. I felt really abandoned. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why my mom chose this other life instead of choosing to love me. And it really stripped me of my identity and who I was. And when I went to school, I pretended like everything was fine. By the time I was 12, we had gotten news in a letter that my mom was sent to prison, and she would be in prison for the next 12 years of my life. And so for 12 years, I had to accept that I wasn't gonna have a mom around, and I was never gonna know what it was like to have her. And all these thoughts and these images that I had of this redemption story of her coming back into my life to be this amazing mother again, this like picture perfect movie type mother. All of those dreams were stripped away. I had this really cool like Parent Trap idea that one day she would get back with my dad and that we would live in our house together, and me and all my siblings, and that I would step into my high school years just living this amazing life, and that just wasn't the reality. I got that letter. Yeah, everything just kind of crushed and crumbled around me. I continued to move. I ended up moving with my dad, and living with him was really tough as well. He didn't know how to be a dad. He didn't know what just the responsibility of taking care of his kids, as many as us were, was really tough. He has a lot of health issues, and financially we were going through it. So we went through a lot of poverty, and we were on welfare a lot. Like, he was on disability. And I remember just for a lot of years, I started stealing. In middle school, I would go to gas stations and steal packs of gum and then sell that to my friends so I can buy some other food. We would use our food card to like buy pizzas and stuff from 7-Eleven so we can have meals. And just some nights it just didn't work and we would just be hungry. And also in middle school, just a funny side story, I was bald in the 6th grade because I had to shave off all my hair because I had lice. So I was moving into this new school, surrounded by people I never knew, and I was constantly being bullied. I know I'm smiling about it now because it's funny to look back about it, but it was really tough to be in this new environment and try to make friends, but no one wanted to be around me. And in all this time, I grew up in a church-going, like faith-based culture. I'm Samoan, so a lot of our culture and traditions stem from Christianity and our beliefs. So I've been going to church since I was born. My parents were both people that served in the church. My mom was a worship leader, and my dad did like deacon ushering things. And so we were around it all the time, but I didn't really know what it meant or what it felt like to have a relationship with Jesus. I didn't know or understand what it looked like to really not just serve him, but to really know him and love him and care about the things that he cares about. So by the time I was in high school, my mom's in jail. I'm at this point living with my grandma, my dad's side, and most of my siblings that have had the chance to move out have moved out. So it's really just me and my younger 2 siblings. I remember at this point in my life thinking I need to figure out a way out of this cycle. At this time, I had moved a million times and I didn't see a way out. If I were to look forward in my life from when I was a freshman, I remember just thinking about the future a lot. All I could see was more hurt, more heartache, more abuse, more cycles of the same behaviors. And so I made a decision when I was a freshman in high school that I was going to do whatever it took by the time I was 18 to get out of not only my city, but my state, or whatever it was that would take me out of the situation that I was in, that I was constantly being put in this place of feeling unsafe, of being hurt, of not being really my true self. And I was going to do whatever it took to get out of there. So I decided I would either be in the military. So I joined MCJROTC, which is Marine Corps Junior Reserves Training Officer Corps, or I would get a full ride scholarship to play volleyball. So I started playing volleyball. I was in ROTC, and I worked really, really hard for 4 years, just putting my head down and doing all that I could to make one of those things happen. And for 4 years, I kept my head down and didn't make any friends again. I was going through a lot of emotional and physical abuse at home with my grandma. Yeah, I just went through a lot of psychological attacks in that time, and would go to school and try and pretend that everything was great and I was just this volleyball player who had a lot of friends at school that weren't really friends, just people that I associated with that I really didn't tell the truth to, honestly. So I was a senior in high school and just had built up all this resentment for my situation and the things that were going on. Fall of my senior year, I had gotten no looks from any colleges, and this was something I was banking on. I really wanted to play volleyball in college and get out of my city and get away from these people. And at that point, you're supposed to have a lot of looks. You're supposed to have people coming in from all over, and I have friends that are getting signed to play at universities, and I'm not getting signed. And I, at that point, had tried to do everything I could to get to this place of success, and nothing was working. And my relationship with God was so messed up and I didn't know what was going on. A lot of the time I kept hearing these things about who he was and who he was supposed to be, this protector, this savior, this perfect person that was supposed to have this amazing relationship with me and love me and take care of me. And it just did not make sense. Everything around my life had no evidence of his hand on anything or on any of it. And so that winter of my senior year, I had made an attempt to take my life and commit suicide. And all this stuff at that point had just piled on top of me. This depression, this anxiousness about not having anyone to talk to or be vulnerable to. I just felt so isolated and alone. The people in my life, my parents who are supposed to love me, they don't love me. So how can I expect God to love me? How can I expect my teachers to care about me? How can I expect my coaches to really know me? Obviously, it was a failed attempt. And I came out of it so frustrated. And I felt even more alone and more like a failure. And I remember telling no one about it. I woke up in the same bed that I slept in and woke up in the same house that I hated, surrounded by people that hurt me a lot, people that said that they loved me, but they showed otherwise. I went to school the next day and showed up to every class and watched everyone around me living their lives while I was in this place of suffering and isolation. And a couple months later, after my suicide attempt, I continued to play volleyball because that's what I knew to do. I developed this behavior of people pleasing. So a lot of the times I just did whatever anybody else wanted me to do. So if people said that they thought I was a volleyball player and they wanted me to do it, I was going to do it. So I played travel ball for my last year. In February, I was in Vegas for a tournament, and all of a sudden, all these people, all these college coaches started coming after me. I don't know what it was. I'm not gonna say that I prayed about it. I didn't pray then. I'm not gonna say that it was God sending me all these things, but I believe that everything good comes from the Lord. So all these college coaches came, and I got 10 business cards from coaches that wanted to give me a full ride scholarship. And all I had to do was choose one. Because I didn't talk to God, because I didn't have a relationship with him, all I thought about was myself and what I wanted. And what I wanted was to get as far away from California as I could. So I chose to go to Louisiana Tech University, to a state that I'd never been to a college I'd never heard of. And I got my wish. I visited the school that spring, and then that summer in July, I moved out of the house I was living in, left my family, and went to Louisiana Tech. Little did I know I would bring all of my problems with me, something that I thought existed only in the places that I was hurt, traveled with me to Louisiana. And I was depressed, and I isolated myself again. And I was unfortunately put in a position where my coach was abusive and used to dangle my scholarship in front of me a lot and threatened to send me home, which caused a lot of fear. So for 2 years, I struggled with depression and anxiety. I had a lot of PTSD from just being hurt a lot and being abused by people. I couldn't, again, make close relationships with people. It was hard for me, again, to be honest. Still, this was a place where I would say that the Lord met me the most. I tried so hard to put myself in a dark room alone, and he kept pulling me out of it. I met my best friend, who's my best friend now to this day. She was my roommate, and she would physically take me out of my room so that it would take me out of this headspace that I was in, and she would go to church with me. I found community with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes while I was there. Even though I was going through a lot, even though so much was going on around me, I was still dealing with the wounds of not having a mom and not really knowing what it meant to be who I was and discovering who I was. It was really just redeeming in the fact that even when I tried to push myself away, the Lord kept pursuing me and the people around me, and it kept sending people to love on me and to care for me. But even in that place also, I made a lot of bad decisions. Even though I knew the Lord was pursuing after me, I still chose to fall into these pits of depression and stop going to classes. Into my second year of playing there, I decided that I would only be a good volleyball player, that was my worth, that I was just going to try and please everyone and be a good volleyball player, and I had no other energy to be a good student. So I stopped going to classes, and I pretended to everyone around me that I was fine. I kept serving in ministries, I kept serving in FCA, kept going to church on Sundays, kept going to life group on Wednesdays, and tried to outserve the problems that were going on. In the summer of 2017, I got kicked out of college. And in this time, I was at an internship in California for FCA, for volleyball specific ministry. And it was a 10-week incentive of teaching volleyball players what their identity was and what the Lord wants to do with their lives using their platform of volleyball. And in the beginning of that internship, I had gotten a phone call that I was getting kicked out. And my whole world, again, just crumbled around me. And a lot of fear came up. I didn't have family like the rest of the girls around me had family. My best option, I thought, was to go live with my grandma again, which is where my family was living at the time. And I remember just crying and begging the Lord to put me somewhere else or to find any other way. And that summer, I really learned like what the fruit can be of when you sow seeds of vulnerability and honesty and truth. And because I was open with the people around me, after that summer, we had come up with this plan of where I can go. So I was 19 at the time. I had gotten this devastating news, and I had all these people around me get around this whiteboard and just write up a plan for where Nani is going to go, what I'm going to do, what my future plan is now that this thing happened. And so they set me up. I lived with a host family for a year in Huntington Beach, California, and it was the most amazing, transformative time of my entire life. I will always give props to the Clarks because they had so much patience in this time where I was learning what it meant to be a daughter, where I was learning what it looked like for me to care about myself and not worry about the people around me. They taught me a lot about what it looked like to be good parents, because I have 2 boys. They were just so kind and so loving and patient and really reflected what the true and genuine nature of Jesus was. And this was the first time I had ever felt like the Lord was like really for me. And he just revealed to me all these times that even in my testimony of all these hardships, of where his hand was, where he was sitting, how he was feeling, how even when I'm feeling pain and anguish and heartache, that he is feeling those things and 10 times more because he loves me. And my year of living with this host family, I got to learn things that I didn't even know were important to God. I didn't know I had hurt surrounding finances. So they sat with me a lot. My mentors who worked for FCA, they sat with me and worked with me on finances because I didn't know what it looked like to have abundance or how to save or how to care for myself in that way. We came up with a plan surrounding that. I had a job selling electric bikes, which is really cool, and it's provided me with a lot of opportunities to have growth and to really think about my future, the future that I want, not the future that I think that people want for me, or the future that I believe I can have that will benefit someone else. So I lived with them for a year. I moved on my own in the next year, living with some of my best friends, doing ministry with them. We would play beach volleyball on Sundays as ministry to invite people into our home. We would have worship nights and prayer nights and have family dinners and do all these really cool, amazing things and just see the Lord transform the community around us. And each of us being able to just love on each other and like really redefining what it looked like to have a family that loves you unconditionally. They don't have to be around, but they chose to be around. And I came out of that with a lot of my best friends. After a year of that, a lot of growth happened. In those years, my mom was still in prison, but I finally had a chance to like sit down and really forgive her and forgive the people that hurt me in my past, and my coach, my family members, my dad and things like that, and just did like a lot of just self-reflection and thinking about my testimony and how I want to utilize it to help people in the future and what I want to do with my life. And in the following year, I decided that I would do YWAM, which is Youth with a Mission. It's a global outreach program for young people and missionaries. So I went to Kona, Hawaii and did YWAM and got sent out to Nepal with a group of people and was able to see some amazing things, trek the Himalayas, preach the gospel to people that had never heard the name of Jesus. At this time, my relationship with God was honestly the best it had ever been. I fully had this relationship with Jesus. I finally recognized that I was a daughter. He had redeemed a lot of things and redefined what love was like for me. And he just gave me these amazing gifts that I was finally recognizing were over my life, gifts of mercy and grace and the ability to love people well where they are. Yeah, I had fallen in love with him even more going into Nepal. I also didn't know much about the Holy Spirit. I didn't know the power of the Holy Spirit and the way that he moves. And it wasn't until I did YWAM and went to Nepal that I really saw this in action. And there was a moment where I had trekked for 2 days into this river village, this really remote place. And there's this small group of believers there. And they needed a lot of help with just firing up the people around them and firing up their church. And we wanted to go there and love on them. So we went there for 2 weeks, and we every morning would have to trek 30 minutes up to go to this church. While we were doing our walk, we did a prayer walk every day. We met this lady who had been really, really sick. For 3 days, she had been sick to a point where they were about to medevac her out because she didn't have the medicine or the supplies that she needed where she was, and she just continued to get sicker every day. She was just sweating profusely. Like, she had yellow, like her mouth was yellow. She had like sores on her hands. And I remember walking up to her and just hearing the Lord like clearly say, like, take her hands and pray for her. So I took her hands in mine and I prayed for healing and didn't see any change. And I prayed again and again. And honestly, I walked away and I didn't see anything. And then the next day, again, we hiked 30 minutes to this village. We did our walk again and we visited her house and we walked right past her because we didn't recognize her. She had gotten completely healed in the hour that we had left her after praying. It was just this amazing moment of celebration. We were so happy. It was just crazy to see that not only did the Lord want to heal her, but he wanted to transform her. Like, she didn't look anything like how we saw her the other day. And we just saw her spirit just come alive. And we left her with a SIM card that had a copy of the Bible in Nepali in it. And she plugged into her phone. And I remember her saying that this was like the first time she'd ever had the word for herself, that she's always had to like share the Bible or share the word with other people that had it. But like, she finally had a chance to read it for herself. So that was one of just the many miracles that we saw. At this time also, I had this amazing high of just, I loved the Lord. I had such a great relationship, like I had said. I used my testimony a lot while I was out there to encourage and love on kids and families and people that we saw. I was in Nepal and I had this amazing experience with God. I had an amazing relationship with him. And then I went to this place called Chitwan where we took care of this orphanage that we were living with for 2 weeks. And from there, after serving them, we drove 15 hours up to Kathmandu where we were staying. And in that time, I had gotten attacked by someone that was working in the van service that we were using. And I remember coming off of the van that we were in, going to Kathmandu, just feeling so defeated. If I had to define this time in my life, it was probably the lowest I had ever felt in my faith. I just remember thinking over and over again that this trust that I had with the Lord, this relationship that I had with him, all these truths that he had over my life, I had felt in that moment that none of it mattered, that none of it was real. And quickly afterward, I had one of our leaders pray for me and immediately got rushed and filled with his love, with his grace, with his mercy. He reminded me of all the moments where I had these same exact thoughts, these same exact doubts, where I thought he didn't care about me. And he reminded me of all the moments where he proved that he did. There was just this beautiful moment where I saw him physically healing and protecting my heart and transforming it and using it to love people. And And even though it was hard sometimes and I cried a lot and felt like worshiping was hard and felt like serving was hard, at the end of it, I'd never felt closer to him. I had never felt closer to like his true character and his heart. And I would constantly feel him weeping over me and loving me and trying to fill me with his spirit. So after Nepal and all the amazing things we saw there, I had gone back to Hawaii and decided that I would come out to Colorado. My brother lives out here and my older brother Christian, and he was just starting his family. He had his first baby girl at the end of 2019. So I moved out here to be with them. And by that time, I had been just so amazed by all the work that the Lord has done. And now I'm here 2022, about to be 2023, and I'm 25 now. My mom was let out of prison a couple of years ago, and we have a great relationship. I really got to see the Lord transform her life while she was in there. She helps people in need. She leads worship. Actually, that's not true. She doesn't do that anymore. She still helps people, but she doesn't lead worship anymore. So she is honestly someone I look up to and someone that I admire. And even though we didn't have a strong relationship with me growing up, she has done all that she can now to just restore that and make it something brand new. And I honestly couldn't be more grateful to have my mom back in my life and for her to be around. I love it. She's a great grandma to my nieces and nephews. My relationship with my dad is great as well. He lives back in California. I'm just happy for everyone just getting out of that season of our lives. Like, it was difficult for everyone. I honestly don't blame my parents. They had a really tough go of their lives. If they can sit here and share their testimony, it would be just as crazy as mine. And I have just a lot of grace for what they went through. Me and my siblings are all in a good place. We have rocky relationships. I have rocky relationships with some of them, but honestly, that just goes with the territory of going through traumatic experiences with a group of people. Like, some people will take it differently and some people won't. And honestly, I'm just glad and thankful to have the relationship I have with some of them, if not all of them. And hopefully one day it will be all of them. I am working towards doing full-time ministry. And honestly, I just can't let go of this transformation and this amazing thing that I saw the Lord do in my life. So much so that I want to spend the rest of my life like helping people figure out their purpose, figure out what to do after like horrible things happen to them. Like, how can they find the Lord at the end of that tunnel, you know? If I could do anything, it's to encourage people that seasons will come and go, but the Lord is faithful. He is consistent. He is who he was, and he'll always be just the loving and faithful Father that he is. And even when it's tough to see his hand is always over you. If my testimony can be anything, I hope that it's encouraging to a point of freedom. I've shared my story in places where I've seen people receive freedom in just knowing that this isn't the end of your story. Depression won't be the end of your story. When you are faced with horrible things in life, the Lord will come and redeem and restore you. He will take back all the things that the enemy has tried to steal from you, and I promise that 100%. And I don't know what it'll look like specifically for you, but I know that the Lord does all things for those who love him. Yeah, if I can leave with just one verse that has encouraged me throughout this whole story, it's Romans 8:18. And I remember saying this over and over and over again until I believed it in my heart. And it's, for I can consider that our current sufferings are not worth comparing to the glory that will be revealed in us. And I'm sitting in a place of knowing that glory and the Lord revealing that glory in my life. So just trust and believe in him. And I know the days are tough and the trials seem never ending, but one thing that I've learned is that God is always, always faithful, and he will always, always look out for your best interests. Just know that there is purpose in your suffering. When I was growing up and not having a mom around, looking back, I see all these amazing mother figures that the Lord put in my life. I had women who were teachers and coaches and like my friends' parents and people that I knew in my life that the Lord sent to me to love me. People who like put up money so that I would be able to play volleyball, because otherwise I would not be able to afford it. And people who would give me rides to places because I had to take the bus a lot. I saw him like transform me and my sister's relationship, where we had gone through all these horrible things, but we always had each other. She always held my hand. She was always someone who the Lord used to be strong for me when I was weak. There were times also just like when I didn't have enough, like in college, where I didn't have enough money. I didn't have people to send me money like everybody else. And all of a sudden the Lord would just gift me with these amazing things of just generosity and random things from people, or yeah, just these small things where the Lord just shows up and says that this is where I was at. And even in that moment of when I was suffering and when I tried to commit suicide, when he took me back to that place to go through my story with me, he showed up there. And now this horrible memory that I had got transformed to a place where I got to understand how the Lord feels for us. When I thought that I was alone in my room doing this thing, crying, I then saw him show up with his arm around me, and then realized that he had never left me, that he would never forsake me, that he would always show up. And I was bald once. Now where I'm at, I am recognizing and realizing that the Lord didn't say that we're going to have an easygoing life, that we weren't going to live like how we're going to live in heaven in just perfection, that we are going to go through trials, that we are going to go through tribulation, that there are going to be things that people do to us, and that they're going to make him sad and they're going to make his heart break, but it's just stuff that we go through because of sin and the enemy and people's choices. But something that I know to be true is that that is not the end, that he has the victory ultimately. And now every day, even when hard stuff happens, even when stuff happens to me and I'm recognizing that I'm not fully healed from some things, or I'm being reminded about other certain things in my story that were hard, just things come and go, I'm still like rooted in this truth that the Lord is for me, that he'll never be against me, and that there will always be glory to be revealed. So thank you for choosing to sit through all this. This is just one of many videos to come in this revival series. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you guys so much for watching to the end. I really hope you enjoyed that testimony from Nani. I really hope that when you were hearing her testimony, you could relate it to something that you've gone through or that you're going through right now. And you realize that no matter what you're going through, try to focus less on the bad and more on what can God do with this? What can God use this for? That he's not just going to leave your suffering to die, but he's going to use your suffering and use what you went through to build his kingdom, to build his glory. And with that said,